It's time to start building the product you've been dreaming of. You have the vision, you've done the research, now it's time to start building. You'll need to start working with a plan. What does that look like? If you did a previous exercise and you did go ahead and define the MVP using a product requirements document or a product spec, there you go. You already have a blueprint of what you need to start with. There's a list of features in there and you can go ahead and start implementing them. But hold on a second. That's a lot of work. There's a whole bunch of features in there. Obviously, these are still your minimal viable features, but still, there's a lot. Where do you begin is the question. When you're trying to plan development of your product, right, there are a few things you want to take into account. And all of these really center around how quickly can you get the product out in the hands of users and build your product iteratively as opposed to building in one shot. Planning development for your product, it's a big deal. It's a time for change, growth, and learning for everyone in your team. Now, there's two parts to this conversation. The reason I wanted to break this up is because there are folks who know how to build. There are engineers, people with past coding experience. This talk is for you. If you do not have coding experience, I will be listing out a few other frameworks that I've used in the past, which are great to go ahead and actually start building without committing the resources of hiring an engineer. Step one, be agile. Now, based on the goals of your product, you have a few features listed out. Even within a feature, you want to actually break it down into very specific engineering tasks to be completed. Now, I call these tasks, but really you are following the agile methodology where you're going to break up a complex sounding feature or task to be accomplished and break it down into a combination of epics and user stories. The objective of a user story is essentially combining the use case that you want to accomplish by building this feature. And it always ends with a measurable milestone. So you do not call a user story complete unless it actually checks off your success criteria. A user story could have one or more engineering tasks associated with it. I don't want to complicate this because this goes into the whole agile methodology, which you can always learn more about. The objective being follow agile, right? Break your development into sprints. Start with the features, and within your features, break them out into what you may want to call epics or user stories. Discuss these user stories with your engineering team. Make sure they completely understand what you are expecting them to go develop and expect an ETA from them so you can understand what can be accomplished within the next sprint or 2 sprints and when you can call this feature complete. A really important reason you want to discuss the success criteria is because this keeps everyone motivated. So when you're at the end of the sprint and you're ready to showcase the user story, you are actually excited to see, does this accomplish what it was supposed to accomplish? And do we meet the success criteria? The second very important thing as part of this development journey is setting milestones. Your milestones are actually very crucial points along your journey to determine whether your team is on track. Listen, developing a product, especially a tech product, takes time. You may want to think about this very carefully so that you are not spending 6 months developing. Instead, you're spending, small 2-sprint iterations, 2 weeks or 3 weeks milestones to make sure that you are developing enough to go get feedback from users and then come back and reiterate. Just make sure that these milestones are, assigned or associated with certain value. For example, the first developed version, the first beta launch, and so on, right? So these are actually measurable milestones that your entire team can collaborate and work toward. Number 3, and as a founder or as a product manager, please keep this in mind. Don't push too hard. It's hard enough to do what you're doing and to corral an entire team together to bring your vision to life. This is going to take time. Like I said, this is the time for change, growth, and learning for everyone involved. And it's important to keep this in mind because it is tempting to push the team, especially when you are seeing that things are not going as planned. Refrain from scope creep. What ends up happening is you may listen to a user and hear or see a competitor developing a certain feature, and you may want to push your team, derail your roadmap to squeeze in a new feature. This completely disrupts your planning. Every time you introduce any kind of change, really think about what is the impact this will have on your final deliverable, whether it's really worth making that change right now, and if it is, Something needs to give. If this became one of the more important things to do, something else became less important. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about your roadmap, your prioritization, and make sure you're not pushing the team to do it all. That's physically impossible.